What's up, world? Will Roye here in the Virginia Wayside Furniture Studio, and this is 8 at 4, presented by VCU Massey Cancer Center. 8 segments about the people, places, and things you need to know about in the Richmond area. Today we're talking vino, verses, and we celebrate a legendary Virginia photojournalist. Let's do it! So one thing that we know is that everybody loves vino. I took a trip down to Brambley Park Winery in Scott's Addition to grab a glass of bubbly with Bobby Kruger.
My name is Bobby Kruger and I'm one of the founders of Brambley Park Winery in Scott's Addition. Me and my partners were looking to do a green space in Scott's Addition because we felt like that was lacking. There wasn't a lot of opportunity to go out and enjoy some of the nature in the city, and we lucked into a property almost 2 acres right in the heart of Scott's Addition, but kind of nestled against the train tracks, so it's a little bit more secluded. And a big priority for us with the build out was to try to hold on to as much of the green space and highlight as much of the green space as possible while still having a place where people could come and have good drinks and good food and enjoy good music. We make wine here at Brambley. We also source wines from other wineries, both in bulk and in package. So we've got Chardonnay, Petit Manseng, Viognier is a big one for us, Grenache, and Syrah that are all Virginia varietals, and we use those as single varietal wines and also as blends. Brambley's unique, I think, to this part of Richmond, specifically because we are a production winery and not a vineyard. We do source grapes from other wineries, but we don't grow any ourselves. We source grapes from all over, California, from Oregon, from France, from Virginia, from Chile, and then turn them into a variety of wines. We have beer, we sell spirits as well. We've got a full restaurant here, so typically you get, I think, a more robust hospitality experience at Brambley than you would at another winery. As things get warmer, we started to ramp up our Brambley Park After Dark music series. That's on Fridays and Saturdays. Doors are at 9:30. They're ticketed events with some of the best local bands in the area. Then we also have our upcoming anniversary, which is on June 6th. We're gonna be doing an oyster roast, as well as having a band that evening. And then we're also in a partnership with the Squirrels right now, and we've got a bunch of fun events with them throughout the summer.
Growing up in Richmond, one of the highlights of my summers was what we called going to the rocks. As an adult, I realized that those rocks were actually Belle Isle, Richmond's very own island in the middle of downtown. Take a trip with me. Belle Isle has been a popular hangout spot in Richmond for as long as I can remember. The lush greenery, rushing water, and wildlife make it an urban oasis, only minutes away from the hustle and bustle of downtown Richmond. This 65-acre island has plenty of history as well. Native Americans were known to use the shores of Belle Isle for fishing. John Smith, who the world knows from the movie Pocahontas, was said to have purchased the land from Chief Powhatan. You can access Belle Isle via a pedestrian bridge that runs underneath the Lee Bridge. There's also access from the South Shore. Kayakers enjoy the intense rapids around the island, while others go to hike, walk their dogs, or just chill out on the rocks. If you need a quick escape from the city this summer, Belle Isle is the place for you. From curation and connections in the digital space, entrepreneur Sarah Choi is embracing her Korean heritage in a brick and mortar on Broad Street.
I'm Sarah Choi. I'm the owner of Kismet Studio in downtown Arts District. I didn't think I was looking to open a retail store in holiday times last year. It sort of happened. I felt like I was finding and following signs to be here. I'm Korean American, born and raised in Korea until I was a teenager. It was only recently that I started seeing the fact that I'm bilingual and bicultural as an asset that I can share with people who want to learn more about Korean culture and especially how Korean people connect with their spiritual selves. And so when I thought about all of those things together, it was the fact that what I know about my culture and my history and how I put that into action in my spiritual practice. And also, I love arranging flowers. Once I decided maybe all of those things need to happen in a physical space instead of a digital space, I started looking for a space. And of course, I love the diversity in downtown Richmond. At Kismet, we offer fresh flowers and arts and gifts that are designed to promote more mindful and peaceful living. Kismet opened in April, and the first artist that we have up on the wall is Misha Goldberg, who is also Korean American who lives in Charlottesville. I'm so happy to have her work on my walls here. And I also have some pottery work from Josh Singleton, who's a local potter in Richmond, and he's also Korean American. It's been really heartwarming to see people just stopping, passing on Broad Street, and it's been like really people of all walks of life and all ages and all different origins of people, and I think it's been wonderful for me to connect with them that way.
Up next is 8 at 4 Sports, presented by the Richmond Flying Squirrels. Baseball may be America's pastime, but soccer is the most popular sport in the world. Take a look inside a Richmond Kickers soccer match. Drums rolled, emanating from the Red Army cheering section from the first whistle to the last during the recent U.S. Open Cup match. And amid a rising tide of enthusiasm for soccer throughout the United States, the Richmond Kickers recently celebrated the longest history of any professional club in the country in front of 4,621 attendees. This was the largest crowd at City Stadium since the team's 2019 home opener. Founded in 1993, the Kickers tied with the Charleston Battery as the longest continuously run professional soccer clubs in the United States, celebrating their 30th anniversary season this year. The club is chaired by Robert Ukrop, a Richmond native and former Kickers player. Over its history, Kickers appeared in 8 league championships. So raise your hands, or a pint, or a Henny, and give a toast to longevity. After his recent retirement from the Richmond Times-Dispatch, legendary photojournalist Bob Brown was honored by the Virginia Press Association with the Lifetime Achievement Award. Our senior editor, James Wallace, offers his perspective on the award and working with Bob.
It's not just always about the work with Bob. I think it's also about the connections that he builds through the work. As an editor, he has done nothing but made my job easier. Bob is dedicated, professional, passionate, and meticulous. He forces you to raise your game and to raise your level. And that's one thing I always admired about Bob, because he doesn't really take a day off. We will go out on an assignment and the expectation is always exceeded. And that's what I always say. If you want to be successful, exceed expectations. And I cannot recall a day where Bob has not done that. The fact that he can turn in 30 photos from something like a press conference and still feel like he hasn't done the job appropriately is what sets him apart from just about everyone I've ever worked with. Bob is known for giving people pet names around the newsroom, and I'm sure it extends beyond the newsroom as well. But if you got one of Bob's pet names, and I've sat across the cubicle from him and heard him call out those names for people, and Bob could tell, depending on how someone walked, who was walking by without even looking, and that's how much attention he pays to detail.
Virginia is famous for its mountain hiking trails, and Richmond has plenty of great trails of its own, only a short drive from home. Walk with me. If you're putting the finishing touches on your summer body, then getting some outdoor exercise is always a good idea. Richmond actually has a plethora of hiking, walking, and bicycling trails. Some of these trails are tucked into nature, while others are right in the middle of the city. I checked out the Virginia Capitol Trail, which starts just east of downtown and spans nearly 52 miles to Jamestown. I also explored Ancaro's Landing, which marks the beginning of the Richmond Slave Trail. This trail chronicles the history of the trade of enslaved Africans from Africa to Virginia. Many of these trails are easy to overlook if you're unfamiliar with their locations. Some other popular local trails include the Belle Isle Trail, Pony Pasture Rapids Trails, North Bank Trail, the Canal Walk, Buttermilk Trail, and many more. It's time to get outside and get active. Ask anyone who writes poetry or music and they'll tell you that performing at open mic nights is the key to honing your craft and spreading good vibes. I took a trip down to Addis Ethiopian restaurant to check out Tuesday Verses, the longest running open mic experience in Richmond. Tuesday Verses was my first open mic experience in Richmond, and boy did I enjoy it. There's an atmosphere of love and unity from the moment you step through the door. The music is great, the smiles are warm, and the drinks are cold. Tuesday Verses kinda reminds me of that old show Cheers. You know, it's just where everybody knows your name. Whether you write poetry, music, or comedy, there are always eager ears and open hearts, ready to support your art. Addis also serves some of the best authentic Ethiopian food around. Bring your appetite and your artistry to Tuesday Versus open mic experience. Next, Bishop Ernest Leon Moore Jr. wants to give you a history lesson on the neighborhood of Blackwell.
I am Bishop Ernest Leon Moore Jr. We are in the place I love, Blackwell RVA. As the city began to annex in 1910, 1914, a large group of African Americans began to settle. And so Southside, at that time, the faith community were concerned about education, and there was James H. Blackwell, who was a black educator. It was his leadership that provided a quality education for blacks in this community. He was a community leader, he was an educator, and he did work in the schools. But at that time, they did not allow black male leadership to be promoted into principal. It was the advocacy of Reverend Binga that put a demand on some changes, and eventually James Blackwell became the principal of Dunbar Elementary School. It was the segregationist city code in 1921 that caused them to oust James H. Blackwell, which is a repeated trend for black life in Richmond. There were a lot of thriving entrepreneurs in the early 70s. In the 80s, we are now moving into the Reagan administration. The war on drugs was prevalent, so the Blackwell community began to experience the impact of that. And so there was a lot of crime because of the war on drugs, or the drugs implanted in our community. And that's when we begin to see things change. 35 years later, so we are seeing some positive movement, but it's going to take the community petitioning and advocating for resources that we need so that we can have the quality of life. I still live in Blackwell, at the homestead of my family. And I have a great hope that Blackwell is going to be Brightwell before it's all over.
Well, that wraps up another episode of 8 at 4 presented by the VCU Massey Cancer Center. It's always a pleasure. I'm Will Roye, and I'll see you next time.